One British officer later describes the battlefield as a horrifying scene filled with blood, dead bodies, and wounded men. The British have won the ground, but they have paid dearly for it. Their losses approach 1,000 killed and wounded, while American casualties are roughly 450. Among the dead is Joseph Warren, one of the leading political figures in Massachusetts. Although he held a military commission, Warren had chosen to fight as a volunteer. His death transforms him into a powerful martyr for the Patriot cause. The battle becomes known as Bunker Hill, although much of the fighting actually takes place on Breed's Hill. For the Americans, it is a military defeat but a psychological victory. They have demonstrated that inexperienced colonial troops can stand against Britain's professional army and inflict devastating casualties. For the British, the lesson is equally important. The rebellion cannot be dismissed as a minor disturbance. General Henry Clinton later observes that a few more victories of that kind could have placed British control of America in serious danger. During the summer of 1775, British political authority across the colonies begins to unravel. Governors in several colonies are driven from their homes or forced to abandon their positions. In places such as North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, New York, and New Hampshire, royal authority is rapidly disappearing. Outside Boston, Britain has remarkably few troops capable of restoring control. The weakness is demonstrated dramatically when Ethan Allen and a force of New England militia capture Fort Ticonderoga. The supposedly formidable fortress is defended by only a small British garrison. The Americans seize it with almost no resistance and capture dozens of valuable cannon. The strategic importance of the victory is enormous. Those guns will later become critical to the American effort around Boston. Yet even as the rebellion expands, many Americans still hope that the dispute can be settled peacefully. John Dickinson of Pennsylvania remains convinced that complete separation from Britain would be dangerous. He fears that an independent America could fracture into competing states, consumed by rivalries and wars. Other colonists still believe that King George III might support their rights if only he could see their grievances clearly. In July, the Second Continental Congress makes another attempt at reconciliation. At Dickinson's urging, Congress sends the king what becomes known as the Olive Branch Petition. The message assures George III that Americans desire peace and the restoration of harmony with Britain. Congress argues that the colonies have taken up arms only because British policies have forced them to defend themselves. But the petition is already overtaken by events. News of Bunker Hill reaches Britain before the American appeal. Reports of British casualties harden attitudes in London. In August, George III declares the American colonies to be in open rebellion. The possibility of peaceful settlement is rapidly disappearing. Meanwhile, the Americans are attempting to transform their collection of militias into a genuine army. On July 2, 1775, George Washington arrives outside Boston and assumes command of the newly organized Continental Army. Washington possesses several advantages. He has military experience from the French and Indian War, a reputation for personal authority, and considerable social standing. His marriage to Martha Custis has also made him one of the wealthiest men in Virginia. Yet Washington quickly discovers that commanding the Continental Army will be far more difficult than commanding a militia regiment. The army is poorly supplied and badly organized. Many soldiers lack proper muskets. Ammunition is scarce. Artillery is limited, uniforms are uncommon, and the camp itself is disorderly. Tents are badly arranged. Sanitation is inadequate. Soldiers frequently ignore military discipline, while officers often behave almost like ordinary members of the ranks. Washington begins imposing structure. Officers receive distinctive insignia. Rules are established against desertion, fighting, and other forms of misconduct. More importantly, Washington orders widespread smallpox inoculation among his troops. Smallpox is spreading throughout Massachusetts, and the disease represents a threat almost as serious as British bullets. The decision to inoculate the army becomes one of Washington's most consequential measures. He also has to manage a collection of powerful and sometimes difficult generals. Nathaniel Greene emerges as an intelligent and capable officer who will eventually become one of Washington's closest allies. Charles Lee, an experienced former British officer, serves as Washington's second-in-command but possesses an abrasive personality and a strong sense of his own importance. Israel Putnam brings battlefield experience from the French and Indian War and Bunker Hill. John Sullivan is an energetic officer from New Hampshire, while Horatio Gates possesses considerable military experience but harbors private doubts about Washington. Together, these men must turn colonial militias into a unified fighting force. The task is complicated by the soldiers themselves. Many feel stronger loyalty toward their individual colonies than toward the emerging American nation. And there is one problem more urgent than almost all others: gunpowder. At one point, estimates suggest that the Continental Army possesses enough powder for each soldier to fire only a handful of rounds. Washington, therefore, cannot risk a major offensive. His immediate objective is simply to contain the British in Boston. The British situation is hardly better. Boston is suffering from disease, especially smallpox. Although many British soldiers have already been inoculated or exposed, the civilian population suffers badly. More importantly, the British are trapped at the end of an enormous supply chain. Food, ammunition, weapons, clothing, and reinforcements must cross more than 3,000 miles of ocean from Britain. American privateers are beginning to attack British shipping, while the fledgling Continental Navy also threatens British logistics. Food supplies in Boston become increasingly difficult to obtain. Hunger begins to look like a genuine possibility. The deteriorating situation damages General Gage's reputation, and he is eventually recalled. Command passes to William Howe. But Howe inherits the same fundamental problem. The British possess a powerful army, yet that army is confined to Boston and dependent on an increasingly vulnerable Atlantic supply network. While Boston remains locked in a standoff, another crisis is developing in Virginia. Royal Governor Lord Dunmore has taken refuge under the protection of British naval forces around Norfolk. From there, he seeks a way to weaken the rebellion. Dunmore recognizes a profound vulnerability within Southern society. A huge proportion of the population is enslaved. Plantation owners fear that any widespread uprising could destroy their wealth, authority, and entire social system. In November 1775, Dunmore attempts to exploit that fear. He announces that enslaved people and indentured servants who are willing to take up arms for the British Crown can gain their freedom. The proclamation is revolutionary in its implications, even though Dunmore's primary objective is military. For enslaved people, the British offer creates a possible route toward freedom. For Patriot slaveholders, it represents an existential threat. Within weeks, hundreds of escaped enslaved people make their way toward Dunmore's forces. They are organized into the Ethiopian Regiment, a unit fighting under the British banner. Thousands more will eventually seek refuge behind British lines during the war. Dunmore's policy, therefore, has an unintended consequence. Instead of weakening the Patriot movement, it convinces many Southern slaveholders that Britain itself now threatens their social order. Norfolk, meanwhile, becomes increasingly difficult for Dunmore to hold. Unable to obtain sufficient supplies, he eventually abandons the town. On New Year's Day 1776, Norfolk is burned. Both sides accuse the other of responsibility, and the destruction becomes an early example of how the conflict is transforming from a political dispute into a brutal civil war. The winter of 1775 to 76 is miserable for the Continental Army. Soldiers struggle to find firewood. Some units are forced to prepare food without adequate fuel. Trees are cut down, fences disappear, and the countryside around the camps is stripped of usable timber. Yet American privateers provide occasional successes. One of the most important captures comes when the Americans seize the brig Nancy, carrying thousands of muskets and substantial quantities of ammunition. Such prizes are desperately valuable to an army suffering from chronic shortages. But Washington faces another crisis. Many soldiers enlisted only until the end of 1775. When their terms expire, they are free to go home. Despite appeals from their officers, large numbers leave. They take their weapons, equipment, and battlefield experience with them. By January 1776, Washington's army has fallen dramatically from its previous strength. Only about 9,000 men remain under his command. The British, meanwhile, are also struggling. Their position in Boston is becoming so difficult that evacuation is increasingly considered. Then a political shock reaches the American camp. News arrives that George III has addressed Parliament about the rebellion. For many Americans, the king's words are devastating. Rather than treating the colonial resistance as a legitimate political dispute, he portrays it as a dangerous rebellion against constitutional authority. He promises that Britain will respond with overwhelming military force. For patriots who had still hoped that reconciliation might be possible, the message is decisive. Nathanael Greene and other American leaders begin to see the conflict in entirely different terms. If Britain intends to destroy the rebellion rather than negotiate with it, then the colonies must consider a permanent separation. Washington reaches much the same conclusion. The idea of remaining politically connected to Britain is becoming increasingly difficult to defend. The events of the previous year have transformed the situation step by step. The fighting at Lexington and Concord destroyed the illusion that the crisis could remain peaceful. Bunker Hill demonstrated that American militia could challenge British regulars. The collapse of royal authority weakened British control across the colonies. Dunmore's proclamation convinced many Southern leaders that the Crown threatened their society as well as their political rights. Now the King's Declaration appears to close the final door to compromise. For years, many colonists had considered themselves loyal subjects demanding traditional English rights. By early 1776, that position is rapidly changing. The question is no longer simply whether Parliament has the authority to tax the colonies. The question is whether the colonies should remain part of the British Empire at all. The American Revolution has entered a new phase. The war that began as resistance to taxation and imperial authority is becoming a struggle for independence. Britain is preparing to bring greater military power across the Atlantic. America, meanwhile, is preparing for a fight it cannot yet know how to win. The confrontation that began with a disputed Parliament resolution and a failed attempt at reconciliation has now become something much larger. The road to independence has been opened by blood, battlefield defeats, political failures, and the collapse of trust between a kingdom and its colonies. And the most consequential decision of the revolution is still ahead.